One defiant area is California, where you got a governor who's basically trying to undermine the federal government already. Now, I said if I were President Trump and there was a mayor or a governor or even a county commissioner that refused a waiver to detain a criminal undocumented person, somebody who's been arrested for a crime, and they didn't detain him, I would arrest that governor, that mayor. I would send the attorney general, which would be Pam Bondi, to that jurisdiction with FBI agents and put that person in handcuffs with the media photographing it. That's what I would do if I were President Trump, because that's the message that these people need to get.
All right, folks, I hope you've had a good dinner. Open your presents. Merry Christmas to you all. And Happy Hanukkah. I mean, what a coincidence. They're both here. We got a great show headed your way. Bill O'Reilly and Michael Whatley are going to join us. Before I do that, I just want to tell you real quickly, if you are the person that owns a company or is in charge of finances, I'm going to give you a game changer for you. It's called Ramp. It is a software management finance system that will change how you do business. You won't have to chase around employees looking for receipts. They issue you virtual and physical cards, like a Visa card that you can give to your employees so you can limit spending in certain areas or amounts. It's unbelievable. It is the management software system that is set up for small companies, whether you have 5 employees or 5,000, to save you time and money. It gives your finance team total control and insight into your employee spending. You'll be able to issue the cards, as I mentioned. You and your employees don't have to chase down all of those receipts that you know that if you work for a company or you're the one in charge that you end up always doing. It's easy to use, easy to get started. You can probably get it all up and running in under 15 minutes and start making payments, by the way, right off the bat. It's so easy. And right now you get $250 in your wallet. Pay yourself back for some of the Christmas presents that you bought for other people today. When you join Ramp right now, you can go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer. You will get $250. What a Christmas gift that I'm giving to you today on Christmas. There you go. You're very welcome. Cards are issued by Sutton and Celtic Bank. Members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. All right. Without further ado, Mr. Bill O'Reilly. Bill, always great to see you. Thanks for making time for us.
I had no choice, Sean. You called, you demanded, I gave in, and here I am.
If that were only a partly true, I would think it would be amazing, but that's not true. The Venmo payment has gone through, though. I can attest to you that. So Mayor Adams meets with Tom Homan, the new border czar, yesterday. And I got to say, half of me is excited that somebody who declared proudly a sanctuary city just a couple years ago is now coming over to the side. And I should be just accepting that and saying, great, if we can move more people. But part of me wants to say, really? You're the one who touted this and was so proud to call yourself a sanctuary city mayor and talk about open borders and decry us as racist and et cetera. And now you want to talk about keeping New Yorkers safe.
Adam is trying to save his butt. He's in big trouble with the law and in public opinion polls. He knows that most New Yorkers don't want this unfettered, undocumented migrant surge, costing a fortune. The state doesn't have any money anyway. So that's why he's doing what he's doing.
So it's political.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad man. I know him a little bit, but it's not going to come to anything. New York is run by unbelievably corrupt progressives on the city council in Albany. So Adams can say whatever he wants to say. He can meet with Homan for 3 weeks. They can go to Club Med together. Not going to matter. The structure in this state has to be torn up before anything concrete is going to happen on the migrant front.
So is Adams a one-off because of his political situation? Or do you think other Democrats join in and say, all right, I might have declared myself a sanctuary city before, but I'm on the wrong side of this issue and I need to get right with it?
Yeah, I don't think the right and wrong are anything that these people even consider. It's all about them getting power. And if they think that their liberal base wants a sympathetic posture toward undocumented immigration, that's what they're going to do. It's cynical. I know my analysis is, but I've lived in New York. I was born here, raised here. I know what the game is in the Democratic machine. Across the country, I think the last election that we had a month ago proves that Americans are coming back to some semblance of sanity about how their country should be run. And these progressive politicians are feeling that heat. So that's why Adams and others are starting to moderate a little bit. One defiant area is California, where you got a governor who's basically trying to undermine the federal government already. Now, I said if I were President Trump and there was a mayor or a governor or even a county commissioner that refused a waiver to detain a criminal undocumented person, somebody who's been arrested for a crime, and they didn't detain him, I would arrest that governor, that mayor. I would send the attorney general, which would be Pam Bondi, to that jurisdiction with FBI agents and put that person in handcuffs with the media photographing it. That's what I would do if I were President Trump. Because that's the message that these people need to get.
All right. If it's Friday, Bill O'Reilly has a bestseller out. I mean, I'm half kidding, but every time I turn around, you got another book on the best-selling list. You did it again. Confronting the Presidents. And I was thinking about your book in the context of our conversation, because you really always have this unbelievable look at history and you in perspective. And so this week I'm watching Donald Trump open the New York Stock Exchange, named Times Person of the Year. And I started to think about the conversation that I was going to have with you in the context of your latest bestseller. Do you think that he thinks, you've known the guy a long time. Let me just make sure everyone understands that. So I ask you this because unlike a lot of the other people that you write about and you research and then write a bestseller about, you actually really know Donald Trump. And so I ask the following. Do you think that a guy like Donald Trump takes office thinking about his legacy?
He called me after he saw the News Nation documentary on Confronting the Presidents. And I never call the president because that's intrusive and it's not my job. I'm a journalist / historian. And we are now the biggest selling nonfiction authors in the world, Sean. 19 #1 New York Times bestsellers. And I'm sure they celebrate that over there when that number pops up. But the president, Trump, called me and said, I just saw the documentary. It was very interesting. And I said, I sent you the book months ago. Did you read it? He read the portion about him, which I think is very fair, by the way.
I love it.
But he didn't go over the odds. You know, as you know, the president's not a big book reader. But it's interesting you're asking this question because it's right in sync with him. So he goes, well, what do I have to do to get in the upper echelons? And I said, well, the first thing you do is you should buy a mountain right next to Mount Rushmore and then just start the carving because they can't stop you. You can put your face right up there. Can't be on their mountain because there's no space, but get another mountain. But then I got serious and I said, listen, you did something that nobody else has ever done with the exception of Grover Cleveland. And believe me, his second term was the biggest disaster that could ever be. So you should read that chapter in the book so you don't fall into the traps that Grover Cleveland fell into. But I said, it's all about fulfilling a mandate to improve the nation. And you have a vision because the vision's been given to you by the people. But that your supporters gave you the vision. You don't need to go out of that vision unless obviously something happens that he has to react to. But if you can get the border under control, bring down consumer prices a bit, if you can stabilize overseas problems and push ahead like you did in your first term with real wages rising for workers, you'll be considered in the Reagan area. You'll be right up next to Ronnie because I'll make sure you are. the press, the corrupt media will never write the good things that Trump did in his first term. But he had a successful first term, and that's why he was reelected, because people were comparing Trump's first term to Biden's first term. There's no comparison. No comparison.
If you had to
All
put
right?
a
And
number
that's
right
why
now,
he won. That's why Trump won.
I totally agree with that. I think that people were concerned about personality traits the first time. And then they said, wait a second, look at what Biden's done. He may not tweet. He doesn't stay up late, but these policies suck and our lives are worse. I'll take some mean tweets if I can have the good policies back and a safer and more prosperous country. If you had to rank...
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, based on all of your research that you do on all these books, if it was just the first term, because I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. If it was just the first term, where would you put him among the 46 presidents we've had?
In the upper echelon, in the positive area. Very hard for a one-term president, by the way.
Right, fair enough. But that's why I want to ask you the follow-up. So where if let's just say he has that successful second term. Right. You mentioned Reagan. Give me a number. Is that top 5? Is that top 10?
Top 10.
Top 10.
Top 10. He's not going to get the top 5. I mean, those presidents that are in the 5, Lincoln, Washington, FDR, Teddy Roosevelt, James K. Polk. I mean, people are shocked. Who? Polk is the guy who extended the United States from sea to shining sea. He was brilliant in what he did. Nobody even knows about him. But Trump could get into the top 10. But the first time around, the Capitol riot hurt his historical legacy. So he's got to overcome that now. And it may not be fair, because I don't believe he incited the riot. He was never charged with it. No serious person investigating what happened that day would say that Donald Trump wanted that riot. He didn't. All right. But the corrupt press branded him as an insurrectionist. That hurt him. But he can overcome all that if he carries out his vision now. But it's easier said than done. That's for sure.
So when I watched the Meet the Press interview last week and then read the Time magazine profile, in my time with Trump, I saw a different guy, somebody who is more thoughtful, more deliberative in his responses. Is that a one-off in your opinion, or do you think that he comes to this second term with the frame of mind that you just talked about, that he's thinking about how do I get into that top echelon of presidents?
It depends what day it is. So
that's the right answer.
You probably know this better than anybody. If he's bored, he's going to stir it up. He's going to be a provocateur. And so to keep him busy. And if he's going to France, to the cathedral at Notre Dame, and he's the most important person by far in that celebration, then he's not going to be a provocateur. But if he's sitting around and somebody annoys him, and he's going to lash. And the best advice to Donald Trump is keep that down as much as you can and keep concentrating on a bigger picture of success. It doesn't matter what CNN says. You, Donald Trump, have destroyed CNN. You have destroyed NBC News. You have destroyed the Washington Post, because they're all not coming back. They're all done. So that you've got them. You don't have to dance on their grave. What you have to do is to make sure you have a clear vision on how the problems should be solved. Not pie in the sky. And I'll give you an example. When he says, well, we're going to end the birthright legacy. You're not. Because that would require a overturning of the 14th Amendment, which you're never going to get when Congress comprised of Democrats at this point. You need 2/3 of both houses to throw out an amendment. Last time it was done was 1933 prohibition. Never been done since then. So you're not going to be able to end that. So don't even get involved with that stuff. Do the things you can do and do them well.
So let's just go down you mentioned secure the border. I unequivocally think he'd have widespread support on that. What are those other 3, 4, 5 things that he should focus on the first term to have a successful presidency and legacy?
Okay, so he's going to get the border secure. That is a fait accompli. He'll cut down the migrant intrusion by 75%, because Mexico is going to have to cooperate or he'll break their economy. And Sheinbaum's got to know that. So they'll put the troops back on the northern and southern border. Mexico will. I think Trump should declare the cartels a terrorist group so we can take care of them, because Mexico never will. And we got to stop this fentanyl drug stuff. And that's the way to do it. We'll take care of them. All right. And we know where they live, and we got enough people and drones to take them off the planet. And that's what should happen, just like Soleimani in Iran. The second thing is, in a consumer way, what you want to do here is have enough free market competition that salaries go up, the best company wins, the best prices win, capitalism comes back. Get the government out of it. It never works when the government is in the free marketplace. Get him out. Trump, that's where he lives. He's in that zone. So I don't expect trouble there. Then he's got to go overseas. I think he's already got to deal with Putin for a ceasefire in Ukraine. I don't know. He won't tell me for sure, but I think that he does. All right. And then with the mullahs in Iran, who are behind all the terrorist atrocities, they're on the ropes. So Trump can go in and break them just like he can break Mexico quickly. So I think that there'll be some arrangement there to stop the nuclear stuff and to stop the terrorism. China's a wild card. And it was smart of Trump to invite Xi to the inauguration. Xi won't come, but Xi will send his foreign minister. And Trump's very good at deal making, as you know. That's his game. He knows how to make deals. And so I see him, the odds are that he will have a successful second term, unlike Grover Cleveland. And he will accomplish most of the things he wants to accomplish.
You know, you mentioned the birthright. The other big thing that he wants to do is tariffs. He thinks they're a negotiating tool. I think they've effectively been used. You saw how quick Justin Trudeau, Governor Trudeau,
sure,
hightailed it down to Mar-a-Lago when he did this. You mentioned the president of Mexico as well. If he goes through with the tariffs, is that ultimately going to be a good thing or a bad thing in terms of the American consumer?
A lot of people like, oh, well, we don't want to have tariffs. The country was at the richest point in its history in the 1890s. It was all tariffs.
It depends. So, number one, he's using it as a negotiation. So if you don't do this, is what's going to happen. So do it. Give us a favorable trade situation. We don't want this huge deficit. I think it's a mistake to call little Justin Trudeau. I can make fun of him, but he should, give Trudeau respect, because Trudeau obviously wants to please him. You don't want to. I don't know why you would want to diminish him. I don't have a lot of respect for Justin Trudeau, and I'm sure Trump doesn't either. But so what? If he's going to do what's good for America, then we prop him up a little bit. That's just me. I mean, I'm a disciplined guy when I'm evaluating this kind of stuff. But by and large, Donald Trump's going in with a very clear vision of what should happen. And if he can get 75% of that done, he then gets in the top 10 of the presidents.
So these corporate CEOs are now sucking up to Trump. The first term, he was bad. They walked away. They wouldn't appear on councils with him. They were very vocal that they would instill DEI policies in a response to some of his announcements, pronouncements, policies, whatever. And now they can't help meet with him quick enough and talk about how great he is. Mark Zuckerberg, who was the king of Zuckbucks in the 2020 election, suddenly wants to donate $1 million to his inauguration. Okay, I am a bitter Irishman. I'm petty, right? You piss me off. I make you sit in the timeout box and beg for forgiveness. I can't help that. He almost relishes these guys coming back to him.
Sure.
Is the tactic, hey, you were wrong, you're sucking up to me? I just think that they're being transactional, and maybe that's good enough. But I can't help but think, why did these guys get to jump the line to become his buddies now because they write a big check and say nice things. Shouldn't they sit in the timeout box for a little while?
What good does that do?
I know. Makes me feel better.
So I'm president, right? And I know Zuckerberg tried to undermine and was successful to some extent the 2020 election by pumping $300 million into a few swing state counties, which is what Zuckerberg did. And it's never been defined, never. So here's Zuckerberg going, goes to Mar-a-Lago, I want to be a friend now. So what do? Slap him around, humiliate him? What good does that do? I take his million. All right, so hey, Mark, thanks. And then after Inauguration Day, I bring the new head of the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, in, and I say, I want you to appoint your inspector general. Take a look at the $300 million that Zuckerberg pumped into 2020 and tell me where it went. Tell me what it did. And I want that on my desk in 8 months. And then if Zuckerberg did something untoward, you got his million already, and then you go, this is what he did.
All right, maybe that's a lot better than me. That's a lot. You're a historian, and you've written all these books, as I mentioned. But you also have vast experience and understanding of the media landscape, and you've seen a lot change during your career. As someone who's had this kind of experience, I mean, put your historian hat on for a moment and say, what would you, if Trump called you, aside from the big picture legacy stuff that he wanted your take on from the book, if he said, okay, Bill, I got this new press secretary, Caroline Levitt, I got a new opportunity to engage with the press. I used long form media and independent media successfully during the campaign. How should I approach the media this time? What should I do different, the same, et cetera, from the first time around?
Look, there's a couple of realities that President Trump has to accept. The media hates him. Always going to, not going to change. The culture of the media is ardent liberalism. Every corporation, with the exception of Fox, is that. So you got to accept it. You're not going to change it. Number two, you don't have to engage the media anymore. You won. You don't have to convince them. You don't have to cajole them. You don't have to do anything. You won. You beat them. So the press secretary and the communications office inside the White House, they have one job and one job only, to talk to the folks. Press directly to the folks. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. These are the accomplishments. These are the problems. Now, I hope a 27-year-old can do that. I'm not sure. It takes a very large frame of reference to do it. And then if you want to bring it up to the legacy level, the communications office at the White House has got to know their history. I diffused something very, very quickly on News Nation when they were screaming about Gates and RFK Jr. and all of this stuff, and press was appalled. You remember that, Sean? Yep. It was only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
I mean, people were the panels and all. I looked into the camera. I said, "What is this?" It's exactly what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did. Silence, because none of those pinheads in the media know anything about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They don't know anything. And then I explained the Roosevelt administration, by necessity, was ruled by about 5 guys. All Harvard guys, a couple of Columbia, but mostly Harvard guys, Harry Hopkins, all of these guys. And FDR basically had them in the White House, and all of the cabinet heads just got phone calls from his inner circle and said, you do this, you do that. They don't make policy. Now, under Bush the younger, they did. Condoleezza Rice. You had Cheney as vice president. You had Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense. You had Colin Powell, Secretary of State. They had power. They were telling Bush, yeah, you don't do this. Bush did a lot. That's not what Trump's going to run in the White House. All of the policies are going to come from the Oval Office.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so the committee, the heads of the departments are going to expedite. That's what they're going to do. It's exactly what Roosevelt did. So when you present that to the corrupt media, it's because they don't know anything. That's how you have to handle it.
I think that point, and that's why I was so excited to hear the piece of advice you gave him, because understanding history, how things have worked, who has stumbled where they succeeded, and how that you bring a perspective that is so missing. Because I think, to your point, there are so many times when I talk about the contract with America, what Newt did, how this worked, and that's only modern history, and I'll get these head scratches like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Well,
they don't know.
They don't know."
So that's how you handle a press if you're Trump. Again, you're trying to convince him.
You think he can, though? I agree with you, just so we're clear. But I wonder, you've known him longer than anybody.
Do I
don't
think
know that he can resist.
It depends it depends who he hires. He's got to have access to people who know what has happened in this country and why. He has to have access to them. Now, I don't know who they are. I mean, I don't vet them. All I do is I'm the only combination reporter historian in the national media in the country. Nobody else does what I do.
What do you think, based on everything that you've known, all the reporting, right? This is what your historical wheelhouse is, understanding these presidents. This is why you have all the bestsellers. Where do you rank the cabinet? I get they're not confirmed. If everyone was confirmed, where does this cabinet rank? You want to talk about history?
You do that because you don't know how they, what their potential is, what their discipline is. You just don't know. If I'm a senator, I look at people, can he or she do the job? So Hegseth, for example, can Hegseth run the largest corporation in the world, which is the Pentagon?
Right.
Does he have the experience to do it? Can he do it? So you got to give Hegseth a chance to come in and try to convince you that he can. But that's the bar. That's what the senators are going to be looking at. Now, there's a lot of politics involved. You and I are realistic people. We know that. But you've got to have some kind of level of sophistication and frame of reference to operate in any White House. But it's easier for these people to operate under Trump because they're not making policy. Trump is going to make the policy.
Yes. All right, last question for you. I believe that this day one, I was there in 2016. I've watched several modern inauguration days. You give a speech, you go back to the White House, you get a tour, you get your badges, you go to a ball and dance. That's the routine. Last time he signed a ton of executive orders, and then we went to the ball and danced after the media lied about Martin Luther King being taken out of the bust of the Martin Luther King. By the way, just as a side note, Bill, if you ever make it to DC, the White House experience that they've just set up is phenomenal. But even those guys got it right, that there was the bust of Martin Luther King in the fake Oval Office that the media couldn't get right. If his day one is anything like has been reported, how historically, context-wise, will this be in terms of other day ones? Because I don't think anyone's ever seen anything like it in history, but I don't have the depth and breadth of experience that you do.
Well, it's going to be hysteria because Trump will overturn what Biden's done in many, many different areas, and the press will go hysterical on it. As far as history is concerned, you did have presidents like Andrew Jackson. He's the best example, and it's Trump's favorite guy. And I keep telling Trump, don't get a Derringer because, Andrew would shoot you and you don't want to get involved with any firearms. But Andrew Jackson came in after John Quincy Adams and just wiped out everything. It was like, okay, I don't like Quincy Adams. They hated each other. Quincy and Jackson hated each other. So Jackson did it. Jackson came in, I'm wiping everything out. And there are a few other presidents who despised their predecessors so much that they just came in and that's what Biden did. That's what Biden did. And it led to catastrophe. Trump will be flamboyant. I believe he will do a lot of executive orders quickly, and the press will, of course, respond. But he's got to have Caroline, was it Levitt? Is that
Yep.
that our last
Yep.
time? She's got to really be up and explain to why are we doing this? What is this going? Why is it going to benefit the American people? She's got to be very, very methodical in her presentation. And that's a heavy burden on a 27-year-old. I remember when I was 27, I was lucky I wasn't in the penitentiary. I mean, it's ridiculous. But she
I think
looks
when I was
like a very,
37,
very, yeah, she looks very smart and everything. But there'll be a lot of pressure on her.
I agree. Yeah. I don't know that I would feel any different when I was 37. Luckily, I was in my 40s when I took that job. Bill O'Reilly, another best-selling book to your resume. I think, what is it? Just out of curiosity, what is this now? Best-selling
19 number one New York Times bestsellers. And you know how happy that makes them, Sean, over there.
They're just so excited. When they have to put Bill O'Reilly number one, there's somebody that says, no, it's your turn. You do it. I did it last time. Anyway, congratulations. I know we're going to get number 20 in like 2 months now, though. Thank you for joining us. Always appreciate your time and your insight.
Merry Christmas, Sean.
You too. Merry Christmas. What a great conversation with Bill. Chairman Michael Whatley of the RNC is coming up. But before I do that, I want to tell you about my friend Leo Grillo. You've been a long-time watcher of the show. You know exactly who I'm talking about. He's the founder of Delta Rescue. He founded Delta Rescue years ago after saving one dog, rescuing one dog that he named Delta, which stands for Dedication and Everlasting Love to Animals. And boy, was that the beginning of a journey. If you go to deltarescue.org, you'll see what I'm talking about. This thing manifested itself from rescuing one dog into the world's largest sanctuary, no-kill sanctuary, not a shelter, not like where they're looking to adopt dogs and cats and horses, whatever. This is a no-kill sanctuary for life. They get the veterinary care, the nutrition that they need, whether they're abused, abandoned. I mean, Leo Grillo takes care of them all. And the cool thing about this is that he's not looking for some big government handout. DeltaRescue.org relies entirely on contributions of animal lovers like me and you. So go to DeltaRescue.org to make a contribution. This is something that you could even, if you missed somebody today, you forgot to get them a gift, this is what you get them. Also, at the top, you'll see this little button that says estate planning. Click on that for me. As a favor to me, click on that, download it, read it, and pray on it. If you're someone that wants to help animals, rescue animals, and you've got an old 401k and IRA stocks of some sort or bonds, make this part of your legacy to help the mission of Delta Rescue endure for generations. You might even, after consulting with your tax professional, find out that there's some tax benefit. So go to deltarescue.org and check it out. All right, without further ado, Chairman of the RNC, Mr. Michael Whatley. Chairman Whatley, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be on with you, Sean.
So listen, yesterday Trump gave this unbelievable presser. Let's start off with, what were your takeaways from what he said during this event down there at Mar-a-Lago?
Well, look, I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is he is acting like a president today. The conversations that he's having with world leaders that are taking place right now are conversations that, frankly, neither Joe Biden nor Kamala Harris are having, even though they technically are still the president and the vice president. The president is focused very much on, when he hits the ground on January 20th, of making sure that he is ready to go. He's putting in place a team right now that's going to be White House staff, as well as all of the nominations for his cabinet that are absolutely perfectly positioned to implement the agenda that he ran on. And he is serving notice to everybody in America and around the world that on January 20th, we're going to flip the switch, and this is going to be a different country than it is today.
It was absolutely amazing yesterday. I mean, think about this. You're right. We're 35 days away from him taking the oath of office. He's going overseas to France, getting greeted like the current president. And then he has this event with the CEO of SoftBank, where the guy comes in, and this just shows you everything you need to know about Trump. The guy comes in and says, I'm going to pledge $100 billion with a B dollars in U.S. investment. It's going to create 100,000 jobs. And what does Donald Trump do? He says, can you make it $200 billion? You got to love this. But here's the thing. I got to wonder what Joe Biden's thinking. He's sitting there like, it just shows you the difference in leadership.
Well, there's a dramatic difference in vision, right? Joe Biden was all about protecting his family, his people, his interests, his administration. Donald Trump is all about making America great again, and he's fighting for every single American business. He's fighting for every single American family, every single American voter. And it really is remarkable when you look at the scope of the meetings that Donald Trump has had over the course of the last month since he was elected, and look at the number of people that he's meeting with, the caliber of the people that he's meeting with, the appointments that he has announced, both for the White House and for the cabinet. And it really is electric. You know, I've spent time down at Mar-a-Lago over the last several weeks, and you can just feel it. Like there is an urgency to the president right now because he knows he's got one term. He's not running for re-elect, and he has got to get done his vision. He has got to get it done. He's got to get it implemented. And that's why he's working as hard as he is right now. And I will tell you, the urgency among him and his team today matches the urgency that we had over the course of the last month on the campaign. And it's really neat to see everybody focused on hitting the ground running on January 20th. That first 100 days is a very serious thing for the president, and making sure that this agenda is going to be implemented across the board within his administration.
You know, it wasn't, I mean, I feel like the election seems like months ago now. I mean, just in terms of the pace at which he's made announcements and had meetings. But have you stopped and thought about what went right? Like, what did you guys do? What were the lessons learned for the RNC as you kind of already have to start looking forward? What did you guys think went really well, and what do you think you have to improve on?
Well, we ran the table in all of the battleground states. We did very, very well in all of the battleground districts around the country. But when you think about Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, there is a constancy that you have to produce in those states. There is a plan that you have to execute. You need three things. First, you have to have a great candidate run a great campaign. There's no substitute for it whatsoever. Second, you've got to get out the vote. Third, you've got to protect the ballot. Obviously, President Trump is a great candidate, and he did run a great campaign. We needed, from our perspective, to get out the vote and to protect the ballot. And so the Get Out the Vote program, we completely retooled it from the previous versions that we had utilized over the course of the last decade. And we're very, very happy with the results of going after low propensity voters, making sure that we are reaching out to constituencies that we've not always targeted from the Republican side, which is why we saw historic shifts with young voters, women voters, African-American voters, Asian-American voters, and Black voters. When it comes to election integrity, we built the first ever national election integrity program. We put programs in place. We put laws in place, regulations in place in every single battleground state to make sure that the right rules of the road were going to govern those elections. And then we made sure that we were in the room. We recruited 230,000 volunteers, 6,500 attorneys, and every time a vote was cast or counted, we were in the room. And that made a tremendous difference in making sure that those counts were counts that we could trust coming down the stretch.
Yeah, I think that there's no question you guys got ahead of the curve when it came to election integrity. You know, you were suing people. You were making sure that these election officials, Pennsylvania, you and I talked about this in the lead up to the election, where you guys got in there and mixed it up and got some big victories. How do you sustain that?
Well, look, our work is not done. I mean, when we think about what we were able to accomplish in terms of turning out low propensity and non-traditional Republican votes this cycle, that's the name of the game for the midterm. I mean, the low propensity voters are going to be even more important in the 26 midterms than they were here because the entire electorate becomes low propensity when you take out from a presidential and go into a go into a midterm. The election integrity program, we are extremely proud of the progress that we made in the battleground states through this election cycle. But we're going to have a lot of different battleground states in this cycle, and we need to make this truly national and go into every single state and make sure that they have the right programs, the right rules, the right regulations in place. And we need to make sure that we're extending our network of volunteers that are going to be both poll workers and poll observers, as well as the attorneys.
So you mentioned the number one thing when you went through your list was great candidate, Donald Trump being a great candidate. That's the concern that I have right now. How do we, as we look forward, whether it's the midterms or the next election, bring somebody to the top of the ticket that brings that kind of energy?
Well, look, I mean, in order to win in a battleground state or a battleground district, you absolutely need to talk to the voters about the issues that they care about. One of the most important things that I did when I was the state party chair in North Carolina was to go out to every candidate in the primary and tell them, find out what those issues are. Find out whether voters care about the economy, or do they care about safety, or do they care about roads, or whatever the issue set is, and then talk to them about those issues. That's what you're going to have to do. By the time you get through the primary, hopefully you have everybody talking about the right sets of issues that are going to translate into the general election. What we saw this cycle was Kamala Harris, and before her, Joe Biden, look at America as a social experiment. And they said, we're going to tell the voters what we want to talk about. And that's not what the voters wanted to hear. They kept saying the economy was fine. The economy was clearly not fine. It was the number one issue on every voter's mind. So Donald Trump talked about the economy. How are we going to restore our economy? How are we going to rebuild our southern border? How are we going to make sure that America is strong enough to protect our interests at home and abroad? The Democrats did not want to talk about those issues because they were losing on every single one of those issues in poll after poll after poll. But you know what? The voters cared about it, and they needed to talk about it. They needed to put solutions on the table. They didn't do it. And that's why Donald Trump is going to be the 47th president.
Exactly. What's the takeaway in your mind regarding the role of third parties, right? So America First Works, Turning Point USA, you name it, they had not played a role like they did legally prior to this cycle. What's your takeaway as a party chairman about how to engage or utilize them going forward?
The ruling that we got from the Federal Election Commission earlier this year, which allowed us to coordinate with the outside groups, was absolutely critical for us. It's curious that the Democrats were the ones who actually asked for that ruling and for the ability to work with the outside groups, but we were able to take such good advantage of it. Look, the fact is the NRA, Faith and Freedom Coalition, Turning Point, and various other groups had always been in the field. We just couldn't coordinate with them. Our ability to coordinate with those guys really, truly complemented what we put on the ground with our grassroots efforts, which was really, truly focused on low propensity voters in the target battleground states. And for these groups to come in and complement that and allow us to coordinate with each other was tremendously important. And we really, truly can't thank all of those different groups enough for the work that they put in across the country. As we go into the midterm election cycle, we want to build on this program. We want to build on the coordination. We're certainly going to work with all of these groups again, but we saw Elon Musk stand up a brand new organization this cycle and put it into the field with tremendous success. We may have other groups that are going to stand up for the midterms or for the 28 cycle. We're going to want to work with them again. So, from the RNC's perspective, I want as many people in the boat as possible facing in the same direction and rowing at more or less the same time.
So, it's funny. I want to talk a little bit about the media for a second. And the first piece of this is, I heard over and over again reporters calling me based on my history with the RNC saying, how nuts is this, these third-party groups? And it was the same sort of narrative that we had in 2016, which was no party committee had ever worked with a campaign committee, i.e. the Trump 16 campaign, in the way that you guys were doing. Therefore, it can't be good. And I found the same narrative playing itself out this cycle, which is the RNC's working with these third-party groups. That's never happened before with respect to the ground game. Therefore, it can't be good. What's your takeaway in terms of how the media, do you need to educate them more? Do you think that it doesn't matter anymore in terms of that they just won't ever get it? But I found that the narrative over and over again was, well, the RNC's outsourced this and it'll never work because, well, the Dems aren't doing it that way or it's never happened that way.
Yeah, we certainly heard the word outsourced over and over and over again. And my response was always very critical to say, look, we are running our ground game. We had tens of thousands of volunteers RNC volunteers, state party volunteers all across the country. We were just sending them to different targets. We were sending them to low propensity voters. We were working on voter registration from people that we knew were conservatives that would be Republican if they registered to vote. And then we were turning those voters out, and we had a much harder focus on those low propensity voters. Absolutely critical for what we wanted to get done. And then we had these other groups that we were able to coordinate with. Very, very, very helpful. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we were self-sufficient in our efforts to be able to get the president across the line. But the fact that we had all of these other groups out there was tremendously helpful, tremendously important. If the media is going to rewrite the narrative based on the experience from this cycle, that's fantastic. If not, we're going to go continue our work with all of these different groups and make sure that we have a ecosystem on the right that is dedicated to winning these elections.
So we've seen this over the weekend. ABC made a settlement, over $15 million in public apologies to Donald Trump for lying about the accusations against him. They got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, but we know that they're not the only ones doing this. And so as you go forward as chairman of the RNC, how do you want to interact with these legacy outlets, these left-wing outlets, the Washington Post, New York Times, ABC, NBC? Because, ABC might have gotten caught and might be paying the fine, but they're not alone. I mean, I don't think they're any better than CNN or NBC.
The media did not treat Donald Trump fairly in this election cycle. They have never treated Donald Trump fairly. They are never going to treat Donald Trump fairly. That's okay. We knew that going into the election cycle. Our point in terms of dealing with the mainstream media was to understand that they were a tool in our toolkit, not the other way around. They didn't necessarily want to be allies of ours, but every single time that Donald Trump had a conversation, had an interview with a mainstream media outlet, it was an opportunity to talk through them, over them, around them, to go talk directly to the voters and give them a message. And we saw the clearest example of that in the debate, where we had moderators that did not ask a single question about the economy, the biggest issue on the table. They didn't ask a single question about illegal immigration, which was the number 2 issue on every voter's mind. So the president used the opportunity to talk past the moderators, to talk past Kamala Harris, and talk directly to the American voters about the economy and about illegal immigration. He was roundly criticized for losing that debate, and yet he went up 2 points during the week after the debate because he was able to get his message out. When we talked to Elon Musk, 2 billion listeners to that interview. When he went on Joe Rogan, 50 million listeners to that podcast. He was able to use every single media opportunity that he had to go out there and talk to the people directly. That's the absolute critical importance. Now, as we go into this next election cycle, we're not going to have Donald Trump on the ballot. We're going to have, dozens of Senate candidates and congressional candidates and gubernatorial candidates. Every single one of them is going to have to figure out how they can approach the media in order to get their message out. But if you don't talk directly to your voters, you're not going to be able to win this election, no matter whether you're running for Congress or the Senate or for president.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, except yesterday during this press conference at Mar-a-Lago, CNN pulled away from it. The president of the United States is explaining border security, $100 billion investment, and countless other issues, vaccines, very important to the American electorate. And yet CNN pulls away from it during his remarks because they didn't want to cover it. And I guess my point is, that's fine. They have a right to do that. But we on our side also have a First Amendment right to choose who we assemble with, who we engage with. And my point is there a line at which we go, great, you guys cover him how you want, you cover me how you want, but then we don't owe you anything. We're not going to treat you like a legitimate media organization.
Well, I think we've already crossed that line. And frankly, if we want to go get viewers, Donald Trump can do an interview with the Food Network, which actually has more viewers than CNN these days. Look, our point is that whatever means we need to use in order to communicate with our voters, that's what we have to do. There's a reason that we're looking at reshuffling the press room at the White House and allowing some of these new podcasts and other alternative media branches into the room. So it's not just all of the mainstream media that are going to be there. I think you're exactly right, Sean. We need to treat them appropriately. And if they're not going to be willing to work with us and cover us in the ways that we think are fair, then we certainly have the ability to walk away at any point in time and go find another medium to communicate directly to the voters.
Right. I mean, it's funny. We had this polling yesterday from Signal that we showed who people voted for and where they got their information. If you watch cable, you voted for Harris 48, Trump 51. People who watch national television, 69% Harris, 30% Trump, right? Almost a 40% delta there. But here's the cool thing. If you get your information from YouTube, 41% voted for Harris, 55% for Trump. If you get your information from streaming, 35% for Harris, 61% for Trump. People who are where the media is going, podcasts, streaming, everywhere else, voted for Trump. That's where they found success. And that's where, conversely, if you're still reading a newspaper, you voted for Harris 73-25 for Trump. I mean, the old school legacy media is where the Democrats are getting their information. Republicans and Trump supporters are getting it in these new mediums. And so I ask you, as the head of the party, whether it's your own press job or the advice that you give to candidates, what are you telling them about how to spend their time when it comes to getting their message out?
Find alternative methods, right? I mean, and go talk on the Sean Spicer show. I mean, the key is that you have got to find a way to get your message to your voters. And the by far the most cost-effective way throughout the course of this election was not to go on mainstream TV.
Right.
If you look at the media spending from Kamala Harris's campaign versus President Trump's campaign, it was overwhelmingly tilted towards Kamala Harris on that mainstream TV. She was throwing money away as far as we are concerned. We knew who the voters were that we needed to reach. We knew what they were watching. We knew how they were getting their news, and we were able to target them on social media platforms, alternative media platforms, direct mail platforms, and we were able to get it to them a lot cheaper. The fact is the Democrats raised and spent $2.5 billion and failed to get that message out for a couple of reasons. One, they didn't have a great messenger. Two, they didn't have a great message. And three, they were running through traditional media that people were just not watching. So we are very happy with the way that we were able to package our message and get it out to people through the alternative media. And then secondly, we just had an exponentially better, candidate with a better message.
Yeah. And by the way, as Democrats do, they went into debt even with all that money. Chairman, I want to ask you, what do you think the role of the RNC and your role is in a second Trump White House? What are you guys going to be doing on a day-to-day basis to support President Trump as we get ready for the midterms?
Sure. Three things that we're going to be focused on out of the gate. Number one is supporting President Trump's nominees. We need to make sure that he is able to staff his administration with the people that are going to be able to get his agenda done. This is an American agenda. And so it really, truly, when we talk about restoring the southern border, rebuilding our economy, keeping our communities safe, making sure that America is strong enough to protect our interests and allies abroad, it's going to take people. And the people that he has nominated for the cabinet officials, as well as the White House staff, are the ones that are going to carry out that vision. We want to make sure that we're supporting that. Secondly, the agenda as it moves forward, we want to make sure that we're going to support. But we also need to be focused on 2026. The fact is that if we lose the House and or the Senate in the midterms, we're going to lose a very critical partner in getting this agenda done. In order to get tax cuts done, we need the House and we need the Senate. In order to get a lot of different legislative priorities done, we're going to need the House and we're going to need the Senate. If we lose either one, then we're looking at fake investigations. We're looking at more impeachments. We're looking at opportunities for them to drag the agenda through the mud for those last 2 years. Very, very critical for us to set up an apparatus right now and start building to get out the vote and protect the ballot, just like we did in the 24 cycle.
You cannot overstate how important that is. I mean, I was there. Second you lose one of those houses, it's impeachment city, baby. And I think people need to understand how critical it is for him to get his policies through and to stop the sham investigations. Let me ask you this. As we get past, I mean, obviously you're focused on the midterms. We clear through the midterms. Does J.D. Vance start 2028 off as the front runner?
Well, I think that if you talk to a lot of the voters, that's going to be the case. But we have an amazing bench on the Republican side of the aisle. When you think about all of the Republican governors that we have around the country, you think about all of the folks that are going to be serving in the president's cabinet over the course of the next couple of years. You think about even members of Congress or others that have been out there in our ecosystem. We have an amazing group of talented individuals that could be in a position to step up and run for president. The Democratic Party right now is in absolute free fall. I really don't see anybody there who wants to step up and acknowledge the deficiencies that they had in this election cycle. It wasn't just bad messengers. They had a bad message. And on our side of the aisle, we have an America First agenda that Donald Trump has put on the table that the American people have overwhelmingly voted for. And so we have a number of candidates who are going to be able to pick up the mantle from President Trump and be able to run on an American First agenda and be able to really, truly have an opportunity to serve America.
So does that mean that the RNC currently under the rules that you guys have will maintain neutrality?
Yeah, we absolutely will. Look, and we have in the past, and we will continue to do that on our side. The beautiful thing is we really, truly do have a very, very deep bench of talented individuals that I look forward to seeing in this primary cycle.
When it comes to his nominees, you mentioned the support for them. What's your advice to senators? I mean, I've given this statistic out. Not a single Senate Democrat voted against a single Biden nominee. For those Republican senators right now that might be wavering on a Trump nominee, what's the message from you as the chairman of the party?
Well, I really think there's two things to it. First off, you've got to meet with them and you've got to have a conversation with them because the president has been extremely careful in picking talented individuals that are going to be able to implement the agenda that he ran on. And then secondly, everybody needs to understand this is an American agenda. The President Trump ran on, restoring the southern border, rebuilding our economy, keeping our communities safe. This is what the American people want. And if these candidates are the ones to implement that, then any senator is going to have to be very careful if they're voting against that agenda that just overwhelmingly won this election.
Chairman, the last thing I'm going to ask you, can you commit to me today that you will put every resource of the Republican National Committee behind Donald Trump's effort to end daylight savings and free us all once and for all?
I think the president made it clear in his tweet that is the plan. I think, obviously you're going to have to take that up with the farmers all across the country who may have a different opinion. But look, I think what I will say is this. The full resources of the RNC are going to be invested in advancing this America First agenda and making sure that we are going to make America great again. And then we're going to go ahead and win in the 26th election cycle and make sure that we get a full 4-year term with President Trump to get that done.
All right. Well, you guys did a great job this cycle. Thank you for your leadership, that of Laura Trump as well, and continued success going forward.
Sean, if I can take just 30 more seconds, I want to just give a shout out to Laura Trump for her great leadership, her great work here at the RNC. We have never had a co-chair who has done as much as she did during this particular election cycle, and it has been an absolute pleasure to work with her. I am thankful that she was willing to step up and serve as co-chair, and really, truly, the entire party owes her a debt of gratitude and thanks.
Amen. Merry Christmas, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being with us.
You too. Take care, Sean.
You bet. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you've had a Merry Christmas. Real quick, we talk a lot about voting with our wallet now after the election. If you're interested in buying American goods as a check against Amazon and Walmart that are safer in your home, do like I've done. All of my household essentials now come from a company that I stumbled upon. If you're interested in getting information and doing it yourself, I mean, my cleaning supplies, my all of the stuff that I use in the bathroom, soap, shampoo, whatever, I've stumbled upon one site that gets it all, and I can get you the information. Just text 276-500-1185, 276-500-1185. I'll send a video out to you that you can see exactly what I'm talking to. Anyway, I wish you a Merry Christmas. Tomorrow we've got a great panel show for you. And on Friday, Pastor John Amachuku, he will be with us here today. Have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy the rest of the day. I'll see you back here tomorrow.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.